So guys, once again, if you can, please subscribe to the channel and please hit the like button on this video. So guys, in this next story, a kilo of drugs was found when a car crashed after police tried to pull it over, which sparked an investigation that put 5 drug dealers behind bars. They've now been jailed for a total of 61 years after a 2-year trial at Snaresbrook Crown Court over the supply and possession of heroin with a street value of £100,000, a gun and counterfeit cash. Inquiries began after 3 men in a Mercedes failed to stop for police in Romford Road in Forest Gate on November the 12th, 2018 and hit bollards in Snows Hill Way. They were identified as Nathan Fellows, who's 36 of Walthamstow, Kevin Gyasi, who's 30 of Walthamstow, Taurus Bailey, who's from Chingford, who's 31, and Bailey and Gyasi ran off but were found in nearby Salisbury Road, where they were both arrested. Fellows remained in the vehicle and a kilo of heroin was found at the scene. The men were soon charged, but officers continued to investigate how the trio came into possession of the Class A drug. Their supplier was found to be a 33-year-old Shahab Sheikh of Essex. Further inquiries carried out by analysing phone data and fingerprints led officers to Ripon of Chadwell, Heath as the man who initially supplied the drugs to Sheikh. And they were all found guilty after a 2-year trial at Snaresbrook Crown Court. So due to the COVID restrictions at the time, sentencing for Sheikh and Ali did not take place until 2021 and 2023 respectively, which meant the previous hearing could not be reported until now. Ali was jailed for 17 years when he appeared in court on Friday, and he will serve 12 years for conspiracy to supply cocaine and heroin, including 3 years for being concerned in the supply of illegal substances and a further 5 years for possession of a firearm. Gyasi, Fellows and Bailey was sentenced in April 2019 at the same court following late guilty pleas. Gyasi was jailed for 10 years for possession with the intent to supply heroin, 3 months for knife possession and 1 year for perverting the course of justice. Fellows was sentenced to 7 years for possession with the intent to supply heroin, including a year for theft of a motor vehicle, and Bailey was jailed for 9 years for possession with the intent to supply heroin. All three had a count of possession of counterfeit currency laid on file. And in June 2021, Sheikh was jailed for 15 years for conspiracy to supply cocaine and heroin, including 6 months for a further count of possession of counterfeit currency and a further 3 years for perverting the course of justice by handing a note to a co-defendant providing written instructions of what to say. The sentence took place after a full trial. So Detective Constable Amy Henderson, who led the investigation, said in a press release that the operation has taken 5 criminals off the streets and taken a significant amount of heroin out of circulation, and she added, "It is no secret that the drugs are a blight on communities and an unknown number of lives may have been saved thanks to officers following their instincts." In another story coming from London Ways, 2 men have been handed prison sentences after 2 armed robberies. James Manbridge, 48 of Chelmsford, was sentenced at Snaresbrook Crown Court alongside Wayne Byrne and Lana Clayton. 2 robbers threatened the driver of a national delivery company's van in Goodmays, armed with a gun and a knife at around 9 o'clock in the morning on Christmas Eve in 2021. They stole the van and drove it to a cul-de-sac in Dagenham, where the contents were transferred to a BMW X5 bearing a false number plate. Third member of the gang, Clayton, drove them away from the scene and she pleaded guilty to robbery, but Mansbridge and Byrne entered not guilty pleas to this offence, which is going to be left on file. The same BMW was used as a getaway vehicle in an armed robbery on a convenience store in Romford on the evening of January the 2nd, 2022. Clayton went to the shop prior to Mansfield and Byrne committing the robbery armed with a gun. They made off with a quantity of cash and Clayton drove them away from the scene, and all 3 pleaded guilty to this offence. On the evening of January the 21st, 2022, the 2 men also carried out an armed raid on a supermarket in Dagenham. Mansbridge terrorised staff with an imitation firearm and Byrne with a knife, and they made off with a quantity of cash and cigarettes. Clayton had purchased the BMW 4 days before the delivery van robbery and was driving it on false plates. However, flying squad detectives were able to establish the car's true identity. This breakthrough enabled detectives to trace the car and identify the robbery team, which was Mansbridge, Byrne and Clayton, who were arrested in February last year. James Manbridge was jailed for 8.5 years and Wayne Byrne for 8 years, with both having pleaded guilty to the 2 robberies in 2022. Lana Clayton was sentenced to 2 years imprisonment, suspended for 2 years. Detective Constable Tom Bow of the Met's Flying Squad said these 2 men are beginning jail terms amounted to more than 16 years. Both are convicted criminals who have shown no genuine remorse for their actions, with Mansbridge in particularly having previously been jailed for armed robbery. The flying squad is dedicated to standing up and arresting dangerous criminals and taking them off the streets, thus preventing further offences and in doing so making London streets safer for its law-abiding citizens. And in a new story, coming from Lancashire ways, an intelligent university student has been jailed for 45 months after being caught selling Class A drugs on 2 separate occasions. Alan Ruddock, who's 20, was on bail for drug dealing in Leeds when he was spotted by officers in an alleyway in Burnley with a group of suspected drug users on January the 27th, 2023. Officers chased after Ruddock, who threw away the drugs and a mobile phone as he fled. The prosecutor, Paul Brookwell, told Preston Crown Court a Nokia mobile phone had dealing messages saying, "You, it's the best of both," offering drugs for sale at £5, £10 and £15. They recovered a wrap of heroin and 5 wraps of crack at the scene, along with £306 in cash. The court heard that at the time of the offence, Ruddock from Leeds was on bail after being caught in possession of 18 wraps of heroin and 14 wraps of crack when he was arrested on suspicion of being involved in a large-scale disturbance involving youths in Chapel Fields in Leeds on June the 21st, 2021. He was subject to a community order for possession of a machete in respect of that incident. The defence solicitor for him said, "Listening to the circumstances of these offences and Alan Ruddock's previous convictions don't make for the best of listening. However, speaking to him, I find he is not the usual type of person that falls to be sentenced in these sorts of offences. He was 18 at the time of the first offences and was a heavy cannabis user at the time. As a result of his exposure to cannabis and people who sold it, he fell in with the wrong crowd, and as a result of his cannabis use, incurred a debt that he wasn't able to pay. This is what led to his first involvement in the supply of Class A drugs in 2021. He's a 20-year-old now, but unfortunately became involved in the supply of Class A drugs for the second time, this time due to a debt he incurred as a result of the drugs being taken from him on the first occasion. Alan Ruddock is a switched-on, bright young man who made one poor choice followed by several more poor choices, which has led him here today. Had it not been for this, he would be a young man with a bright future ahead of him. He was 1 year into a 3-year degree at Leeds Beckett University. He wanted to work in marketing and set up his own business. He said Ruddock has spent his time on remand in full-time education and wants to do everything possible to give himself the best opportunities in life. He became a father and was looking for a home for his young family at the time of his arrest, and he became involved due to his own naivety, running up a cannabis debt. So Ruddock pleaded guilty to 2 counts of possession with intent to supply Class A in respect of the Leeds offences and 2 counts of being concerned in the supply of Class A relating to the offences over in Lancashire and Burnley. This recorder, Andrew Nuttall, said, "You're an intelligent person. In one sense, that makes it worse. You should know better, but I take into consideration the fact that you were young at the time of the offence in Leeds. You were considerably younger than you are now. But be under no illusion, drugs are a scourge of our times. They cause untold misery to people and death, and the courts will do whatever they can to assist in trying to desist and deter people from committing these offences." So he sentenced Ruddock to 45 months for each of the 4 offences he was sentenced for, but said the sentences would run concurrently, and he ordered the drugs, cash and mobile phones to be forfeited. So guys, these are a number of stories coming from the streets of the UK. It's your boy GT. Keep it locked, keep it real.